Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences in strength, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm Michael Krukowski, host of the Strength Connection, and I'm so grateful that you can join me today. So in these episodes, I connect with some of the most inspiring and successful individuals to chop it up and learn from true life experiences that have helped them become who they are, the strongest versions of themselves. One of the greatest ways I've always learned the most important lessons is through stories. We all have them, and they make us who we are. So let's dive in. Here we go. Hey guys, so today I get to jam with this awesome coach, Mike Salemi. Mike has made a great name for himself in the fitness industry as the creator of the Bulgarian Bag and a world-class kettlebell sport athlete. But in this conversation, we focused a lot on the past year of his life, became a new father, how his life and strength priorities have changed, and his work he's doing now specifically with men's health. Mike is such a great guy to speak with, truly aiming up in his life, and it was just great to share the mic with him again. All right, let's get right to it. Before we do, please show your support for the show. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Strength Connection. Your support means everything to me, guys, and I greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much. Let's get on with the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Mike Salemi, good to see you, my brother. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, dude, I'm happy to be here and happy to see you again, my man.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just rolling right off camera. I was like, we better start this soon. Otherwise, we'll just keep cranking. But yeah, so Mike, it's been a few years, I think. I got a chance to connect with you on the last podcast, talking about all things kettlebells, all things Bulgarian bags, all the physical side with stuff. So, to share space with you again is great because it's been a pretty busy year for you. You're a brand new father, like seven months in, correct?
Yeah, right about 7. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, man. That's so awesome.
Thank you, brother. It's the best thing in my life right now. Family right now is hands down. There's some cool stuff that I'm really excited about, but family, it's like outshining everything.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. Well, I see, and I'm sure it's a lot of changes, a lot of things that you probably learned, really in the past, half year plus, with this, which we're going to dive into too, which I think is just, not just the physical side of strength, but really the mental and the spiritual side, too. And I think that's really the first question I want to dive in with you, Mike, because the work that you've done for so long with kettlebell work, with the Bulgarian Bag, now with your podcast that you have, The Path, it seems like strength is really something beyond physical to you. It really goes into the mental and the spiritual side. And you can see that just from the actions that you do. Is that something that you felt early on, or is that something that you kind of adopted or understood more recently in time?
No, I think it's something that's always kind of evolved and developed. Like I've always been very aware, like quite self-aware, or at least curious, levels of awareness have kind of continued to unfold over time, working with different coaches, different mentors, teaching more. So I've been in the process of athlete, coach, now more men's group, let's just say leader. But I've been kind of like in the process the whole time. And anyone who's been involved in athletics knows that in order to be your best, you need to really engage in regular self-evaluation. You need to really look at yourself. And we all have blind spots, and there's things that I can't see about myself. And that's why coaches or athletes need other coaches. And so it's something that I've always been interested in, is understanding, like, what can't I see? What am I not aware of? Or what is outside of my scope? Because even if I do my best to take like a 10,000 foot view of my training program or how things are going, that can be really helpful. But by and large, every single time that I've been, you and I, before we started recording, we're discussing briefly overwhelm or stuck points in life. And usually when those times come up, most often, at least in my experience, it's because there's something that we're avoiding, escaping, hiding from, or something that we just simply can't see. And so this started way back, I would just say, since I was even a young man or just a boy, when I was competing in gymnastics and having former Olympians as my coaches. And so all throughout gymnastics to powerlifting to kettlebell lifting, Olympic weightlifting, I've always done my best to surround myself with just people that like had something that I wanted. Maybe I didn't know exactly what it was, or they embodied something or made me feel something around them. And in that way, I was always kind of drawn towards really good coaches who all basically put it back on me to, the best coaches I've ever had are the ones that didn't necessarily tell me what to do, but that really provided questions for me to come up with those understandings on my own. So it's something that started, to answer your question
Yeah.
in a concise way,
Mhm.
it started way back, but that motivation and that curiosity has just continued to unfold.
Yeah. That's such a powerful thing you just said about coaching is not telling you, oh, this is what you did wrong, do this instead, but leading you into the answer of what do you see here, asking the right question, for it too. So, because it's so easy to think fall into that of like, just tell me what to do, just because I want to get there so quickly, where it's kind of can be enticing as a coach to like be like, okay, like you want to get people there fast, but in order to really be the best and most powerful coach for somebody, sometimes you have to step back and let them find the answer themselves. It might not be the fastest way to get there, but that's probably going to be the most impact over the long term.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the perfect, I think, maybe distinction between coaching and maybe we could say like consulting. Like if a facility hired me as like a consultant to come out and they're like, hey, for our sports team, for our football team, or for our gym, we want to outfit the place with kettlebells, Bulgarian bags. What do you suggest? Well, like I'm gonna basically look at their floor plan, look at their budget, look at the types of people that are coming in, look at their classes, and based off of all of that information, I'm gonna give them my suggestion. But there's going to be some questions before, but in a consulting role, it's much more like telling, but in a coaching role, it's much more asking. And so
Mhm.
it's almost like in a coaching role, at least how I understand it and do my best to coach, it's like 80% asking questions and like 20% offering reflections or maybe pointing out something that they may not be able to see.
Mhm.
But even in that situation, man, you're exactly right. Like a good, well placed question can, like, I don't even remember what it was, but just the other day, I was like, man, that just messed me up for like 2 days, like had me
Yeah.
really going down and really like emotionally. And I was like, oh
Mhm.
man, that one fucked me up.
Yeah.
But a good question can completely change the trajectory of someone's life, hands
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking before just about podcasting because I know you've been about a year in, and I just celebrated a big milestone too on there. And you said like, what are the big wins? I think that's one of the things that I found is to ask better questions or just really dive into finding the right questions is it's actually a really exciting journey to kind of find like, can I ask this question in a better way and actually dive in? It takes time to do, but it's actually, I think, a skill you can develop is actually asking better questions.
That's so spot on. And one thing that I've learned or that I'm learning, I don't know if I've learned it quite yet, but like most all the guests that I have on the show, and I imagine you as well, like they're all subject matter experts. Like they're all fucking really good at whatever it is that they do. They all have something to offer. And so I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself because I'm like, if it was like not a like if it was just a so-so interview, it's not so much on them, but I put the pressure on myself is because it's like it's the question that brings it out of them. Like it's in them. They
Yeah,
live this life that they're an expert in whatever it is. So it's up to me to and up to you to ask these questions that really get to some level of substance. So it's not just like a regurgitated answer that they've given before on 10 other shows.
exactly. We'll get right back to this episode, but first I want to tell you about Nabosu Technology. Nabosu is the leading company in foot care products created by the top functional podiatrist and human movement specialist, Dr. Emily Splickle and her team. Our feet are a connection to the earth and the foundation of all human movement, and it's often the most overlooked part of our body when it comes to health, fitness, and recovery. Personally, I never thought much of how the foot impacts my movement and strength until years ago when I found my intense sciatic pain I was dealing with was coming from a locked up midfoot and ankle issue. So after putting emphasis on this, my pain subsided completely, and since then I've made sure to take care of my feet before anything else in training. I use the Nabosu Neuroball every day, whether I'm training or not, and I felt significantly better in both my barefoot strength training as well as running outside on grass and on pavement. Nabosu has the best products on the market, including the Neuroball, recovery socks, splays, activation insoles, and the kinesis boards and mats. So to check out Nabosu Technology, click on the link in the comments or go to nabosutechnology.com and use the code CONNECTION and get an additional 10% off your purchase. Again, that's the code CONNECTION. Use it to get 10% off. All right, now let's get back to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's a powerful thing because it is. You want to bring the best out of people, from that. I think it's kind of a version of coaching too, that you want to
Mm.
do. Like you want to bring the best out. And I like found people, guys like Tim Ferris, who I like follow, who like just for some reason has the best questions. I was like, oh, he practices it. He actually like figures out ways to ask questions in different ways. I was like, oh, okay, this is a skill that you can develop. But you brought something up there I want to highlight again of that difference between coaching and a consultant. I never heard that contrast before, but I think that's really powerful because I've talked with a lot of young coaches who are just getting themselves going. And, like that early on stage, like you have so much knowledge that you want to throw out with people. When now I'm thinking, I was like, oh, yeah, we're acting more like consultants of like, yeah, we're like telling them exactly what to do when then eventually you need to go into the coaching realm and like kind of go back as we were saying, like ask a question different, let them find the answer from there. I love that contrast. That's a really interesting differentiation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really helpful. And even like
Mhm.
in a coaching session to even communicate to the client, like, because everyone's going to be at a different place. And sometimes it can be really helpful to kind of like even provide some like leading questions, but to even point out to the client, like, at least this is how I've found it to work well. Like, okay, right now I'm going to put on my consulting hat,
Mhm.
share, and then okay, now I'm putting, so that they understand that there's a distinguishment, because at the end of the day the goal is to empower them, like we're talking
Mhm.
about right now, to make decisions for themselves. That's the ones that's likely going to really stick, as
Yeah.
opposed to, again, anytime a coach has told me to do something, not every time, but there was always some level of rebelling inside, or like, I know it better, or I don't want to do that. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, but had it been posed the exact same thing, but in a question form, it's like, oh man, then it's
Yeah.
just like, that's like a really masterful coach. Like if you can really
Mhm.
pose, guide them in the direction that you want them to go, but have them really feel engaged and immersed and participatory in the
Yeah.
process. Like that's beautiful.
Yeah, it opens up a different part of the brain. So now with that, when you found out that you were having a child on there, did you go along the same path? Like, did you have people that you asked questions about? I'm sure you have people in your life who are fathers and stuff like that. Did you seek advice beforehand of what am I in for here? What am I expecting?
Yes and no. Like I
Mhm.
had I mean, everyone who I have on the show, like there's something that I admire about them, and a lot of them are dads, and so that's genuinely where my curiosity is
Mhm.
right now. So I would definitely ask them of their experience for sure and get some nuggets. However, what I really will say, like myself and my wife, like this is our first child, but even her, like it's been so beautiful, brother, to witness her go through from the pregnancy to the birth to now. And she's incredibly intelligent, is a big reader, but she'll read some stuff for sure now. Um, but she's just been so intuitive with the process about her conditioning routine, how she eats, what we feed the baby, like all of that has been the figuring out a sleep schedule. And so we've been super just allowing this little miracle teach us. And so, there's definite things within fathers that I observe and on the shows or just in conversations that I'll note. But man, I've just like also, I'm using this as an experience to trust that deep down, I already know what to do in many cases.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing that I'm realizing is honestly safety and presence. And both of those are kind of synonymous. Like just
Right.
having a presence for like everything that I've done as a coach, as an athlete, everything that I've done has really given me skills to help me manage myself
Mhm.
in this challenging process of fatherhood. So in those periods of overwhelm, and it gets like really overwhelming, like just the other night, I mean, he's got two teeth that are just popping out of the bottom, and he doesn't have like, he can't do breath work, he
Yeah.
can't do like, he can't like, I don't
Do
know,
some
say,
do some tumo breathing. Come on, little
yeah,
man.
yeah, we get bust out the tuning forks or
Right.
some, he
That's
just
great.
can't do it.
Yeah.
He's
Mhm.
so codependent and helpless right now. But in those moments, like when it is just, I'm super tired and he's screaming, like, I'm not saying it's easy, but a lot of the tools that I've developed to help myself regulate have really come to fruition now. But I'm just
Mhm.
letting this little guy teach me and picking up a little things along the way.
Yeah.
But I've realized, man, the presence piece is hands down the most important aspect of fatherhood for me.
Yeah. It's such a big example just right in your face of the power of showing up. I think you can
Mm,
use that in so many different aspects of life, from parenting to consistency in health and fitness. Like the number one thing, if you show up, whatever you do in there, I mean, there's different ways to approach it and there's going to be different programs, but the first step is that power of presence, of just doing it and just showing up for yourself, whether it's a good day or a bad day. Your son there, like he's going to have good days and bad days, right? You got to show up for him from there. Well, you mentioned there about your wife and kind of her intuitive approach in there, and speaking with, some of the dads on your podcast, speaking with other ones in your men's program and stuff, does it seem like mothers have more of an instinct to go on that approach more than young fathers?
ooh, that's a super good question. When I think about the mothers that I know, they're all like even all my friends, guys and gals, like they're all into the same stuff that you and I are into, right? Like they're all into holistic health, working on themselves. So the lens that I think I'm mainly exposed to is yes, like moms that are more intuitive with how they approach mothering and that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. Um, but the biggest thing that comes up is I think as a whole society today, and I can fall in this trap too, especially because I love learning,
Mhm.
is we're more head driven, right? Like the more years
Yeah.
that have gone on, like there's been this departure from how we nourish ourselves, how we sleep, all the how we manage our thoughts, the water we drink, all of that stuff. We've gotten further away from an intuitive approach to managing ourselves and therefore also parenting our children. And so I think there is a likelihood to just super quick, right on Google, like, what is this? What is this? And
Yes.
then just
Mhm.
go down these rabbit holes. So I would venture to guess, now this is a guess, but I would venture to guess that moms are probably going to be a little bit more on the intuitive side just
Mhm.
because they've had 9 months with the baby inside of
Right.
them. And like
Yeah.
that whole time, it was such a powerful experience to like go to sleep with my wife, Lauren, and just witness her, even when she would be sleeping, unconsciously bring her hands to her belly and
Mhm.
just like breathe. And I'm like, whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's been so many things that even when she's not in her waking hours that she does, that she was doing to connect with our son. So I think women by and large are going to definitely be more intuitive. And I think men, of course, we all have the intuitive capabilities, but the go, 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 do, I need
Mhm.
to execute, like all of that stuff brings us more into our head, less into our body. And that ability to feel and to sense, by and large, this is a generality, but I'm going to say
Mhm.
men are going to be a little bit more disconnected to that.
Yeah, I mean that's the divine masculine energy, right? It's that rigid structure, that taskmaster, like, do, where it's, that divine feminine. The yin side of it is much more free flowing, much more creative from there. And when you mention it on intuition, I mean, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about with intuition, specifically like on the strength side as well.
Hmm.
And it is it's this, dance, of partners between structure versus intuition. I think both of them need to work together. Like you need to understand the structure, which I guess would go down more of the knowledge base of it, but then eventually you need to trust that intuition. And I'm wondering, with that term overwhelm, is it thinking that knowledge is more valuable than it actually is in certain situations, when if you succumb to the, enough, you just need to be present and just kind of ride the wave sometimes, maybe that will eliminate some of that overwhelm. Am I on the right path there, do you think?
I think there's
Yeah.
incredible validity to what you're
Mhm.
saying. I'm just thinking of a phone call that I had with a gentleman just the other day, and his overwhelm was mainly due to he just didn't have the vitality stores on board, So just the little, it's like his nervous system was so heightened because he wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, wasn't taking care of himself. And
Mm,
so there's no, like, basically sum it up, he's in a survival state. And so
yes.
there's no
Okay.
way. And I think a lot of men are like that because they're doing so much. They're burning the candle on both ends. They don't have, to your point, enough of a reservoir of yin, because the yin is like when you develop a very powerful yin, it provides a more potent and a more directed yang, or that masculine energy.
Yeah.
But most men just don't have that well because they're burning the candle again at both ends.
Hmm.
So for him, that overwhelm was just mainly due to just physical. He just didn't have the capacity to handle it. But I also think, like, I mean, we all function differently. Like, certain people are going to be like, they're going to have a higher threshold towards knowledge, and certain people are going to get overwhelmed quite
Hmm.
easy. So I think it's a person to person thing. But something that you said really, like, I think was super important that I love, and without like knowledge combined with experience, I think it's also really hard to trust intuition, because it's
Yes.
like that, like, just living 100, I mean, I don't know, I'm just speaking from my own experience, but like just living 100% on intuition without having knowledge or experience, it's like, I don't know, like, imagine fucking a surgeon or something like that who's done 10,000 surgeries and studied all these books, and then he gets this case in front of him that nobody knows, and he's got to use his intuition. Well, that dude could probably, I would trust his intuition. I mean, he's got enough
Exactly. Yeah.
reps
Mhm.
and has been conditioned to know and feel in that process. But if that surgeon didn't have, I don't know, was just me trying to do a surgery, like, I wouldn't go
Right.
with I'd be first one calling the hospital, bro. You
Yeah.
know.
No, it's one of my favorite quotes from Carrie Campbell. It's learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist.
Mm,
And
that's
I think,
beautiful.
yeah, and I think that's where, because I went down in training, I went down kind of a bad rabbit hole with intuition because I got so deep into it a couple years ago when I built my new business and I was training intuitively every day. And I saw such great benefits of it while needing all the mental faculties to do all the things you need to do to rebuild a business again from scratch. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm training intuitively. I'm trusting my biofeedback. This is the way to go. Like this is the niche. And I started working with people who are really on the beginning journeys of getting into
Mm,
their training and they didn't have the structure down yet. And I was teaching them all these kind of intuitive ways to approach and train. And it completely failed. It was like because they didn't build the structure yet. And I kind of had to learn the hard way. And sadly, I apologize to people who I worked with a couple of years ago that threw this out, kind of put you down. But I think it's kind of like you can use an analogy of like LeBron James, where like he's so much a master of his craft that he can create on the floor and do all these things, trusting his intuition, but he's still playing on a court. It's still a 10-foot hoop. There's still rules that need to be in the game. Otherwise, you're not playing basketball anymore. You're doing something else. So I think that's kind of where intuition comes in is you still need to have a box that you're playing in, but then you just create inside the box.
that's a great analogy. Yeah, that's perfectly said. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, um, with the men kind of going into that of talking about like they're so deep into like that yang and that structure, like with like, what's the big, actually with you, like, did you have any, issues at all of almost going down that path of overwhelm of going so much into burning the candle at both ends at any part of the time over the last 7 months?
Yeah, I mean, I'm swinging back and forth from it right now. I
Mhm.
mean, full transparency. Like, for many reasons. I mean, this is new territory for me,
Yeah.
like completely new. And thank God I've done the work that I've done on myself before. And I am still like, it is the most moving, heart opening experience of my life. And it is probably the most acutely challenging experience, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, everything. Like, so for me, what I've noticed, just, and maybe some of the listeners will resonate with this, like, I tend to be, and I've always been this way, but very structured, very disciplined, like very intrinsically motivated. I'm like a tasker. Like, I could just get shit done,
Hmm.
execute,
Yeah.
execute, execute, execute. However, now in this new phase of life, just in the last, Lauren and I got married like a month before Luca came. So in the last, let's say, 8-ish months, more or less, um, got married, had a child, and then doing new things with the business as well and trying to grow. But also, in this time period, I'm now the sole financial provider for our family. Because, Lauren's spending all the time with Luca, and that's a full-time, holy shit job.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time that I've been in a position where I'm now providing for more than one person, which is very new for me. And so where I'm being stretched right now is a lot of how I've managed myself in a given day, how long I work, the hours that I work, what I choose to engage with. All of that is being flipped on its head because, now I get up in the early morning, spend a few hours with Luca so Lauren can sleep, maybe help out midday and then in the evening. But when you take out, I don't know, maybe 5 hours a day, like that's a lot of time to be productive or to work on my own training and my own fitness. And so a lot of the things that had been such habits for, I'm 36 years old, started training almost 5 days a week since I was like 7, 8 years old, 6 days a week even.
Yeah.
So a lot of like the routine and everything that I had been accustomed to and trained and disciplined is now quite challenging. And then the other thing in addition to that, it's almost like I'm going to speak for myself, but I think people will resonate with this. There's certain areas in our life that we know require attention and that we know are like lagging or energy leaks, but somehow we've gotten really efficient in kind of just looking past them. It's almost, I use the analogy, it's like for the longest time I had not even a leaky sink. The sink didn't even work in our master bedroom. And it just took me forever, like 7 months before I called a plumber. But every single time that I walked by that bathroom, every single day, my attention and my energy would be diverted and I would look or I would just feel, it's like, oh shit, sink don't work. Oh shit, sink don't work. Oh shit, sink don't work. And it would pull me. It would pull my headspace and my energy out. And we all have those things. And for me, like a big thing is in the realm of that I'm really learning right now is my relationship with money. Like it's done well for just me, but now it's like planning for the future and establishing a solid budget and like understanding like what's needed for a family. So those were all things that I could have gotten away with the way that I was managing things before.
Right. Yep.
And so now it's one of the areas that, it is, it's scary for me. It's an area I don't understand. And of all the work that I've done on myself, understanding that at a deeper level, especially something that would be able to support a family, I've always escaped, kind of chose the other route. And now there's no other option. There's no option but to face it. And so my overwhelm comes with time management, comes with now looking at money in a different way. That's really where I'm meeting my edges right now.
Do you think it's scary, I guess, in the best word, because it's just an unknown, or it's just something that, like you said, like it was your identity before was like you can get away with this stuff when you're kind of, you're dating or you're single and stuff like you can get away with things a little bit more because you feel like you have so much time, where now time is really seems like it's a lot more of the essence of like every day really counts from there. And it seems like it's really easy at that time to just lean into the strengths even more. You're already a really good taskmaster. You already know how to get shit done. It's like, oh, I'm just going to double down on this. And with the sink, I'll just put a mask on and just pretend that and spiritually bypass that over there. And because, it's something that's just kind of strange. Is it more just like, it's the unknown of like, oh, this is like, I need to slow down a little bit and actually do a budget now in a different way?
I think that's a big part of it. And I think especially it's an unknown. It's something that I think most people in the States, like we were never really taught that growing up.
Yes.
So it's an unknown. It's an area that I'll just label as confusing. You don't quite never really was taught investments or any of this stuff.
Yep.
So it's confusing. It's an unknown. But then the other thing too is, so in my men's group, the guy who leads it, the one that I'm a part of, he gave me this practice that's like, I don't think I've shared this with anybody other than just the group, but it changed it's changing the game for me and how I relate to money. And it's just a very simple practice. I'll just have a post-it here to demonstrate. Yeah. You can do this with coins. I just had some like from a session, like some $50 bills. So basically you're sitting in whatever comfortable position you want. And I have the $50 bills in one hand. I inhale, I raise the 50 or the group of 50s. I exhale, let it go.
Mhm.
And I pick it up again. Inhale, raise, exhale, let it go. The first time that I did this a few months ago, Michael, I can't even tell you how much anxiety came and completely flooded my system when I let go of that money. And the interesting thing that I've reflected on is, yes, there's the unknown, there's the confusion, but there's also what the money represents. And immediately when I felt that overwhelm, I knew exactly like what a large part of it was connected to. And a big part of it for me is what it represents for me is how I aim and desire to be seen by my father and validated.
Wow.
And money for me represents in large part wanting to be seen by my dad and wanting to be seen as an equal and to make it and to make as much money or whatever the story is. Because really, I mean, the money's just like literally, I was just holding a sheet, and this is what just blows my mind. And this just happened a few months ago when I started this practice. I mean, it's just a sheet of paper, but it's
Mhm.
much more than that based off of what it symbolizes, what it represents, where we learned it.
Yeah.
And so the more that I did that breathing practice just for like 3 to 5 minutes, all of a sudden, like the grip and the anxiety specifically has started diminishing. And then I've gotten to look at some of those things. It's like, wow, I am over indexing or putting so much stock in wanting validation from my dad, and it's just coming through the form of money. So can I be courageous enough, one, to feel that and
Yeah.
to recognize that, and then to two, you know, set that story down when it's right to set down. So
Mm.
that was like a big. I mean, man, it still blows me away at how big that was for me.
Wow. Yeah. It's a powerful practice. It's interesting. The power in that practice is just that physical aspect of taking it from the mental to actually now just something as simple as just holding a piece of paper and just letting it go. And what happens there. And I think it's a really interesting lesson of how the mental and the physical are so connected together with stuff. And sometimes we can get so much in our own mind in overwhelm, and we think we can think through these feeling problems when what you just described, right? That's a feeling problem. It's not a thought thing in there. It's like, and we think we'll just get through it. If I just, get through it in my head as much as possible, I'll figure out a solution. It's like, no, you need to let that out in a different sense. And I think, I think that's just my own opinion, but I do feel like women have a better understanding of this
Mm.
versus men on here. It might just be like that masculine energy of we go, go, go. It's like that rigid structure type energy, and we don't step back and sit into those feelings a little bit more. You might be able to speak with this more about the other men that are in this group, but I'm sure you're not the only one that experienced something like that.
Well, it was interesting when I shared that with the men's group. Ted, the leader, had said,
Mhm.
he goes, I told him what happened,
Mhm.
what came up, that memory or that my father, and what my father, more importantly, like less about my dad and what I've made my dad to represent to me. And he goes, after I share that, he goes, something, he's like, you want me to really F you up now? And I was like, okay, what's next? And he's like, money's feminine, right? And I'm like, oh shit. Money comes and goes, money flows,
Yep.
feminine, like that. And I was just like, okay, so now the next layer for me to explore is, how does this connect to how I've related to the feminine in my life? And there's stories there.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's just been really interesting to understand like the layers underneath it,
Yeah.
because you're exactly right. Like there's been many times where I've fought myself through it and I've journaled and,
Yeah.
gone through my head. If I did this, if I did this money management thing or this, and this, but it's
Yeah.
still stored in my body. Like those memories are stored in the body. And until we actually like engage with them and explore them from more of a felt sense, an emotional sense, a sensation sense, and connect to those parts,
Mm.
likely they're going to be stored there.
Yeah. Have you been a practitioner of deep work like this before? Like these experiences that you have? Have you done this for a while beforehand?
I would say in the last 3 years, I've
Yeah.
really this has been so much more of a focus of my practice. In the earlier years, it was much more physical, but
Hmm.
I would say, I started I would say I started down like doing this type of coaching, I think like in 2013 when I started working with Paul Chek.
Okay.
And so that's maybe where it started. And then I went down the route to become an advanced Kambo practitioner, which is a specific type of frog medicine. It's not psychoactive, but it's an
Mhm.
indigenous medicine. So then it was that,
Okay.
and then now it's been the men's work. So it's kind of also evolved, but physical
Yeah.
training is definitely my where I've spent the most time for without a shadow of a
Oh,
doubt.
right. Yeah. No, because it sounds like this where you've evolved quite a bit over like the recent time from when you first started this to, doing this now.
Yeah, very much so. Very much
Yeah.
so.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. What's your How has training changed for you over this time? Like, I mean, because I'm sure you're still keeping track of your physical body, like all that work and stuff like that. Has things changed in your physical practice, like over this time?
Incredibly. Like if
Yeah.
you were to compare, I mean, the biggest distinction would be 5 years ago when I was competing, and so like that obviously like stopping competing, there's going to be a massive shift.
Hmm.
But even more since I've been stepping into more of the realm of like men's work or
Hmm.
spiritual work, energy work, whatever you want to call it, just a lot more. Like I absolutely do a lot of resistance training, still Bulgarian bag work and
Yeah. Hmm.
kettlebell work, but it's not nearly what it was. Now it's much more in the realm of like um, body weight training, myofascial stretching,
Hmm.
eldoas, a lot of stuff that is done body weight, like long breath work practices.
Hmm.
So it's less consistent resistance training and much more things that are just more like wellness oriented.
Yeah. Do you do that now more on an intuitive approach, or do you do it more like do you still keep a rigid structure?
No, it's actually where I need to go right now,
Hmm.
full honesty. Like I need to implement more structure, which is why underneath my computer right now is like a whole planner that I'm working on
Yeah. Hmm.
again. And because I've gone I mean, it served a purpose, but like there's certain things like I've had a knee issue for the last few years that
Hmm.
I'll go through phases of rehab and it'll get better. And then when the pain goes away, I go back to not doing the rehab or, sitting in meditation position like I am right now for hours, like working, and that stresses the outside of the knee. So now it's like, I need to bring my body not only back into some balance of things that I've neglected, but now I actually want to put on some size because
Hmm.
I'm not skinny, but I'm like much tinier than I used to be. And I'm like, it's, and with that, there's something that I've been really just observing and feeling into. It's not only does like having some, I'm not talking a lot, I like to put on like 5, 10 pounds, but
Sure.
just feeling a little bit bigger, and just a little bit more filled out. There's something to be said for like a man with a solid structure. I'm not saying I don't have a solid structure, but
Mhm.
I'm like my neck is smaller. Like I just
Yeah.
know there's certain, and when a man has some size, when a man has some strength, when a man has some mass and looks like he's got physical integrity to himself and to the outside world, both consciously and unconsciously, he's more trustable.
Hmm.
And when I look at myself, like I don't look bad by any means, but I'm like, yeah, I'd love to thicken up a little bit. Like there's just a confidence piece that comes
Yeah.
when you have a more, well aligned and integrous structure. So that's where the structure is going to be coming in right now. And so I'm on like a committed plan to do just a little
Hmm.
rehab every day, use the planner, but I've gone so intuitive that
Yeah.
now I need to like add back in some rigor.
That's it. I think it's a powerful lesson of it's not just one versus the, and you don't just graduate into now you train intuitively and this is, where it's at. It's like, it's this back and forth in there. It's interesting because I almost have a mindset on the flip side of that, Mike, where I've always identified more with like the lean guy because I was never a big guy. Like I never felt like I was like one of the bigger guys out there, but I was always very quick. I was always very strong for kind of the slender person. And I almost like that was almost like a badge of honor, like being
Mm.
very, very ripped, like being low body fat, like having that was a different type of identity. So when I went to more of like putting on some size, and when you put on some muscle, you're also going to put on some body fat. It's just the nature of the game. And you can do as much as you can to minimize it, but you still fill out a little bit more. That was almost a little bit of a mind fuck for me when I was like
Mm.
over a little bit. And then kind of going back. So I think it can still be very individualized, person to person on where you feel the best of like where that walking around strength, kind of feels. Cause like when I'm over 170, all of a sudden it is like a weird trigger in my head of like, do I need to lean back out a little bit when I know it's just in my own mind? But I think that's really, it's the power of identity and the power of the mind that, we're all kind of dealing with.
That's a great point. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. For sure.
That's interesting. So, what else did I had? I had something else that I wanted to go on. Oh, you had something recently on your podcast that you did with your wife about um, sitting with food and kind of having a ceremony around food in there. Can you speak a little bit of that? Because that's something that I've done over the past year of actually having more of like a respect down towards like meal times and stuff. And I've actually felt really like a difference, like a benefit, from it. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Love this topic. And what's interesting is, I forget if we shared in that episode, maybe you'll recall, but definitely it was right after one of the most recent men's retreats or experiences that we ran. And we had a survey going out, just understanding, what parts of the retreats were the most impactful. What did they get the most out of? And what's interesting is, out of, I don't even remember the scale, 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 5. But the two things that every like 100 out of 100% of the guys said was deeply transformative. So like 5 out of 5 was the sweat lodge. That's our big initiation ritual that we do. And the second thing was the ceremony or the relationship to food that we introduced. And it's so interesting because that's definitely not why guys are signing up. Like when they're signing up for a retreat or whatever it is, it's like they're coming to work on some shit. Like they're coming to work on their marriage, or they're coming to work on their health, or wherever they feel limited and blocked. But no one's ever said like, I feel blocked in how I connect with food, or they didn't have that awareness. But really, this is a big part of how Lauren, my wife, and I live. And it's not just with food, but we'll use that as an example. I mean, we really live our lives through a series of rituals. So a series of intentional practices where we stop, where we pause, and where we connect with a part of ourself and then potentially another person if they're a part of the ritual. And in the case of food, essentially, so all the food that we serve, for example, at the retreat, my wife cooks, and everything is sourced via like the most intentional ingredients grown locally. All the meat are farmers that we know typically, that I have a relationship with, or they're animals that I've hunted. So there's a whole story behind it that I'll share with the men. So there's a deep connection to every single ingredient and where it comes from, plus the time, the energy, and the love that was put into cooking it. And so in this ritual, what we do is it's kind of like a sensory experience. So we dim the lights in the barn or wherever we're doing this meal. And so we're kind of increasing the sensitivity of our other senses. So we're dimming the lights, and then we place our hands over the food that's in front. And this was something that I first learned from Paul Chek. And so when we place our hands over the food, maybe an inch or so over, close your eyes and you just start feeling and breathing. And in this practice, we say a prayer, and it's nothing religious, but it's just a prayer of thanks and of gratitude for where every single part of that meal came from, every single person who had a hand in putting it together, whether it was growing it or, for example, Lauren in the kitchen, for the people that are there with us, the brothers that are sitting next to us, and for having this opportunity to, I think it's important, especially in the connection with food, is understanding that when we eat, let's say like a chicken, like we make that chicken a part of us. We digest it, we absorb it, we assimilate it, we bring it into our tissues, and through that nourishment, it gives us the sustenance and the nourishment to actually live our dreams and to do good in the world and to do what we're doing right now. And so a part of it is not only giving gratitude, but also recognizing that in this day and all those that follow, we will make this food sacred through the acts of through how we live in the world, how we treat each other. So it's a time to slow down, to connect, to say prayer. And what I've also noticed, I mean, the hands are so sensitive. So feet, hands, and tongue are the three most sensory rich areas in the body. And that's why, like, I mean, healers use their hands to heal, or people, body workers, whatever you want to say. And so when we place our hands over our food and we slow things down, and we actually like we give ourselves an opportunity to actually feel what's in front of it. And if the food is really vital and vibrant, you can start feeling over time, like almost like little, kind of like little static. I mean, it might be different for each person, but like little tingling or static. And it gives you, and this is just the power of the mind too, because even if you did a ritual like this, pausing, giving thanks, eating in a group of people, even if you did this with low quality food, I really feel that just the intention or the placebo effect or whatever it is, the intention of connecting it and giving strength, or giving it, I'm sorry, just an opportunity to be a part of us, that whole ritual completely transforms how it is absorbed in the body and what it does in our system. So that's in an abbreviated version. You know, it's one thing to talk about it, but another thing to actually go through the experience. But even just anybody listening, if you you can do this with candlelight. We do it with candlelight in the barn, but even just imagine dimming the lights down in your dining room or turning them off. And I mean, you probably don't want to do this with soup. Like, do this with something else. Also, do this with something that you eat with your hands. Like, that's a big part of, like, don't use the fork and the knife. Like, use, slice, I don't know, have some chicken. Like, we do a lot of things like turkey legs, like things that you can just grab, potatoes, and just eat in pure pitch black. Eat with no light at all. Close your eyes, and just that, and saying some words of gratitude and of thanks over the food. Do that for a few nights and just have your own experience, and then tell me after if it's a different experience in connecting, relating with the food.
That's so powerful. I think it's such an interesting thing. In a few different ways. One is, I think, just the power, as you said, of just taking a moment and pausing just before, and like with the people that you're with, everybody just take that quick moment and just, be present with everybody that you're around. If you have friends over and stuff, thank you for coming over. Just that aspect of gratitude. And it's one of those words that we throw around a lot, like be grateful. It's like, oh yeah, absolutely, gratitude practice. Like, are you actually practicing that? This is a beautiful example of it. And I bring it up, Mike. I'm so pumped that you spoke on that, because this is something I started doing going into training, of actually like having a mantra before going into training and just speaking like, this is a gift. Movement is a gift. It's not something everybody can do today. So don't take it for granted. And just taking that moment to pause, of just saying thank you, for it. It's such a powerful and so simple thing to do, but as you talk about, it just brings it beyond that physical, beyond the mental, beyond the it's like into the spiritual, that realm. And it really does. And I'm sure in even digestion and just like experiencing your food and your nourishment, do it for a couple nights and you're going to feel a benefit of it.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I love that. I love that you shared that about training. And it's like, yeah, it's so important. Even chewing your food, like pausing to chew, like, so, and myself included, I got to catch myself too. Like, if I just, if I'm not patient or just creating that pause point, like I'll scarf food down.
Yeah.
But it's like, imagine chewing the food until it's liquid. What did Paul always say? Paul would say, drink your food. Yeah. Drink your food and chew your water. So basically, do it until your food becomes liquid, and then
that sounds very Paul Check.
And then when you put the water in your mouth or whatever you're drinking, you swish it around, like move it around, and just meal times will take a little bit longer, but it's been a game changer. And like stuff like that, when we talk about having a son or having children, it's like that's the things. Like meal times. I mean, imagine like most people are going to be eating at least twice a day. I would say by and large. And so imagine if just one of those two, or both those 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, you had a practice to sit down with your loved ones. Maybe it's only dinner that you can do it with the family, depending on your schedule. But that type of ritual, and teaching my son that intuitive process from he just started eating whole food, like, just what do we gave him, you're going to love this. We gave him a salmon roe. His first food was avocado. Second food was egg yolk. Then he had salmon roe. I think that's all he's eating. Maybe
all right. There you go.
Yeah, he's eating. Next thing will be liver, but to teach him these
then
things.
Throw the ice cream in there and see the eyes just light up from.
Oh, dude. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
that's really great. Yeah.
it's really cool to share that with him now at such a young age, because I didn't learn this stuff till much later in life. So
Uh-huh.
imagine, bringing someone up, who's so innocent and like a sponge, and introducing this stuff. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to be really cool. It
It's so,
already is.
well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm an adult now, but the things I remember so much growing up is times that we spent as a family eating. Like, we were always on the run doing different things, but I was fortunate. Our parents really made us like we enjoy that time where we had home cooked food. And I remember being at that dinner table, and it's like, you don't think of it as a kid of something of value as much as just something you do. And then you realize that those things do shape you, down the line. So now you're doing it with your son. He's going to remember that forever, and he'll probably continue it going forward with his family down the line.
I hope so. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope so.
no doubt. So, Mike, dude, I love this conversation. I really enjoyed connecting with you, and so pumped with all the work that you're doing with everything. So thanks so much for sharing some space today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, bro, anytime. This has been a real pleasure. So thank you for having me.
No doubt. Yeah. If people want to check more of what you got a lot of stuff going on. What's the best place that they can go and see everything that you got going on?
Two best places would be my website, so mikesalemi.io, not .com, and then Instagram, which is just mike.salemi. Both those places has links to the men's retreats or men's programs or one-on-one coaching. So just hit me up, shoot me a message, email, DM, and I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And the podcast, The Path, that's what it's called. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Listeners, go check it out. It's absolutely awesome. Mike, you're the best, man. Got to do this again sometime soon.
I'm super down. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.